Hi, this is Oedipus at Colonus by Sophocles, portrayed to you by Michael and Megan Newton. It's kind of our own adaptation. This is the follow-up story, in a sense, after Oedipus Rex. So, for those of you who don't know already, this is after Oedipus has gouged his own eyes out, after he's realized his incest and his murder, and he's living in exile. So, to begin with, we have some character analysis, starting with Oedipus himself. He's a blind, old man at this point, full of sorrow and guilt for his incest with his mother and the murder of his father, and for the way his children now have to live because of the deeds he committed. Though, by the end of the play, he's actually found some peace with himself, and he's managed to pass away happily, and the gods are very pleased with him, and they actually take him and away from Earth, body and all, because they feel like he has suffered enough. Megan is definitely the artist in this family. Alright, so next we have Oedipus' oldest daughter, Antigone. Now, she travels with Oedipus wherever he goes. In a sense, she lives his exile with him. While she is not exiled, she still travels with him. He's blind, he's old, he can't get around on his own, and she still feels the same sorrow and pity because of his situation and what he's been through and what he did. She's, in a sense, suffering as well. So she is also a very sad and sorrowful character, and she doesn't really come out of this, I guess you could say, somber, sorrowful mood for the majority of the play. Because at the end, she's sad for a totally different reason, because Oedipus dies. So she's sad for her father's loss. Up next, we have the king of Athens, Theseus. He is, we'll say, middle-aged man, in my opinion. That's how I interpreted his character. He is honorable and loyal to what he says, especially to Oedipus. Oedipus asked for him to not to make him go back to Thebes with Creon. He tells him about the prophecy of that if he's buried here in Colonus, he'll eventually save Athens, almost acting as like a wall. And Theseus, I wouldn't say almost humoring an old man, but honoring what would be considered big back then as prophecy and fate from the gods, brought by Oedipus, who at this point almost seems like a blind prophet himself. So it takes care of Oedipus's wishes without second guessing at all. So in a sense, he's a very loyal, honorable person, and like I said, he is also the king of Athens, the most powerful man there, who left to come see Oedipus. So he's a very important person to come and see a supposedly not important person. And last, we have Creon, who is still the king of Thebes. He is much older now, just like Oedipus, but instead of growing wise and more knowledgeable with age, like Oedipus kind of has with his situation, he remains foolish and stubborn in his strength and power, and ultimately that kind of leads to his downfall in a confrontation with Theseus. But we'll hear more about that later. So basically, Creon is still old, foolish, stubborn, wants his way. The best way to describe him is like a small child. Alright, so moving on to a plot overview. To begin with, the whole thing took place in the Grove of the Furies. So this is kind of me drawing the little scene it describes at the beginning. We have an olive tree. kind of a grassy knoll. At some point it talks about a little stone wall off to the side or something, so I decided to draw that. And then Megan also is filling in with her lovely character art. So with the beginning, Oedipus and Antigone arrive at this knoll. They run into a few townspeople, or one townsperson to begin with. The chorus eventually comes in. So at the beginning, it's them trying to win over the people. They haven't met Theseus just yet. As you can see, Megan's actually drawn the citizen over there. And that's me darkening the grass for you. Alright, so in the next, I guess, kind of rising action is spent with Oedipus winning over Theseus and the course, which would be citizens of Colonus at this point, winning them over to his side through his prophecy of what he says will occur, and basically bringing them to his side by saying, look, I know I did all these bad things, but at the time I did them, I had no idea what was actually going on. I murdered the man in self-defense. I took the wife, my mother as a wife, as kind of a trophy almost. I mean, it wasn't an intentional thing. So, and then at this time, Oedipus's other daughter shows up, Ismene. Now, she is not as big of a character, so that's why we didn't discuss her to begin with. But she shows up as well in the rising action, bringing news of Creon and Oedipus's two sons fighting. So, that is kind of our rising action. We will, and also, Oedipus does convince the townspeople and also Theseus that he's right, he needs to stay. Okay, now the next scene is kind of the climax. This is where Creon comes in and forcefully tries to get Oedipus to return, one, by holding his daughters hostage from him, and then a fight kind of happens between a party of people from Thebes and a party of people from Colonus and Theseus and Creon. And obviously Creon and his people lose, and the daughters are come back to Oedipus, but to me this is the climax of the entire story. Alright, and then some falling action, kind of when there's still the big crowds there. Oedipus's son, his oldest son, Polynices, guessing I'm pronouncing that right, comes to his father asking for a blessing, basically saying, if you bless me, then I can be king. His father says, no, I will not bless you or your brother, you will both die. And that's just kind of a falling action scene. Okay, and then the ending, Oedipus, unfortunately, well, fulfilling his prophecy, he passes away. He actually kind of vanishes in thin air in front of Theseus, and both of his daughters are sorrowful, but at the same time, he is happy with his life now. So that is the plot in a nutshell. So next is the main point of all of this. That is our themes. So there's three really big themes in Oedipus at Colonus. The first definitely being prophecy and fate, just like in Oedipus Rex. People of the time period believed in oracles and prophets who brought messages from the gods who they believed could obviously see the future. So they would hold what these people said to be true and would be live by it, or try to prevent it if it was bad, or try to cause it if it was good, obviously, in their lives, and most of the time in doing so would end up doing what the prophecy said to begin with. So, like I said, one of those can be seen is by Oedipus's son. He went to an oracle who said, if you get your father's blessing, you will end up being king. So fate and prophecy play a huge portion in this. And then the next theme to me was guilt, and this was mainly through Oedipus. His guilt was a huge theme throughout it. It tore at him and made things really hard for him. Now, as the play progressed, his guilt got less and less about his situation, and he became more and more like he became more and more aware that maybe what happened wasn't as much his fault. But guilt does play a huge role in this entire thing from the point of Oedipus. Now, old age and death, to me, is probably the most obvious of all, and that would be the comparison between Oedipus and Creon, almost as a theme. Oedipus, in his old age and his death, was wise and honorable. Creon, who did not necessarily die in this play, was stubborn and foolish in thinking that he could take on Theseus, a much younger and stronger man than him. So in turn, you have Oedipus, who accepted everything and through his turmoil had become wise, and then Creon, through his power, had become foolish and overconfident. And so that is a wrap-up of Oedipus at Colonus. Thank you, guys. Thank you to my sister Megan Newton for really helping me with this. I would not have gotten it done without her.